This recording will be live streamed on YouTube and video recorded. And finally, if during any point in the video you want to sort of share your ideas and thoughts, we would appreciate if you could do that through Twitter using the aspirational HCI, HCI Summerfest hashtags. So if you're unfamiliar, Ongoingness project is all to do with creating meaningful connections around death and end of life, and through which working with people in very sensitive contexts, producing really beautifully designed and interesting artifacts. And that's what Linnea Groot and Carvello are going to talk about today. So over to you, Linnea.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Jay. I'm just going to share my screen. So wait, that's always the challenge. There we go. And then percent. So this should be working. Yeah. So yeah, as Jay said, we are part of the Enabling Ongoingness project, and today we will demonstrate through a video, but demonstrate the one part of that project, which is the refined piece, design artifact. And this is a shared collaboration between Northumbria and Newcastle and Sheffield Hallam University. So it's really nice to see a lot of these people here. So yeah, first I'm going to briefly introduce the broader context of the Ongoingness project. So our work is in the context of bereavement, end of life, and dementia. And it's heavily inspired by the work done by Klaas Silverman and Nickman, which they wrote down in their book, or one of their books actually, Continuing Bonds, where they describe their observations that after a person's passing, the relationship doesn't end. So actually the bereaved people, they still feel that sense of connection to that person and still keep a form of relationship going. And we in the Ongoingness project actually explore that same concept of having an ongoing relationship, hence continuing bonds, or hence ongoingness, sorry. Yeah, through design artifacts and how we can use, for example, inherited archives of digital but also analog media to create these new and meaningful connections. And the refined piece is designed specifically also in the context of bereavement, with our first researcher, Jane Wallace, as the participant as well. So she has lost her mother, I believe, 6 years ago, and had a large archive of analog photos from her mother. And we used this archive to create a digital archive of that. And she can re-engage with this archive through the refined piece based on experiences she has in her everyday life. So to demonstrate how this works, we have a short video for you. And I'm gonna switch the screen now. So let's see how I can easily switch to my video, which I should have opened somewhere. It's always good that you on here show all windows. Yes, that should be it. Yeah, so this the refined piece is a small handheld piece. And when you experience something in everyday life you would like to share with the person you lost, you can take a photo of it and describe what you see, what it means to you, that photo. And the refined piece will then respond with a set of 5 photos from the archive of the deceased person that relate to the photo you just submitted or you just sent to it. So when you get back, you can pick up the piece and flip through those photos to see yeah, what they are and what response you got. So now I will stop sharing my screen. I will give it over to Luis, and he's going to tell you exactly how the piece works. So there we go.
Okay, let me just share my screen. Okay, so this is an overview of how a general overview of the system of how it works. I'm going to go into not detail, but going like to guide through each step of how it works or how it came to be to work the way it currently is. So yeah, so the first step, as Linnea said earlier, is the idea that in this case, the bereaved had a collection of images from the deceased person. So in this case, the first step passed by how do we, in this case, enrich the content that we had from the deceased person with more, in this case, not meaning, but how do we reflect the meaning that those images have? So the idea that we went with was of tags. So the first step was having the bereaved person go through each person and tagging them. Since we wanted to have some scope in terms of how they were tagged, we gave some options in terms of tags, like for example, people, time, and location. Time location could be relative or absolute, but also we leave it open for the person to add any tag they wanted. So in this case, the photos plus the tags generated what we call the static archive. And this would, as the name indicates, would be static. So it would be kept the same throughout the whole project. So it would represent, in a way you could say, the past or the life of the person that died. So we would not add more things to it. Since we didn't know what to expect going forward in the project in terms of, for example, relationships between the different types of media and all that, we opt for using a graph database in this case, which would give us more flexibility, for example, for the future in how new relationships between media could happen. But I'll get in more detail why the graph database and how we used it after. So, okay, so now basically we have the static archive, which represents the past and the deceased person. Now let's go look at the part, how do we interact with this static archive. So, okay. So, so how do we interact with this static archive? Like we see in the video, the idea is the person has a moment that wishes, in this case, to share. And the person, for example, not for example, the person takes an image, and the first step, and the step after taking that image is to go to a website that we created where the person uploads that image. And again, it adds tags to that image. But in this case, when the person is adding tags to help with the process, we facilitate and show suggestions of tags that are present in images of the static archive. And this basically creates what we would call the living archive. So now basically we have an archive that represents the past of the life of the deceased person, and we have an archive that represents, in a way, the life of the current bereaved person and in its current state or as it's living its life. So now the idea is, how do we make then the current life in the current, or how do we make a dialogue appear between the current life of the bereaved and the past life of the deceased through these two archives. So our idea passed by in this case is, okay, so every time the person takes a new image and creates and adds tags to it, we basically put that image against against the whole static archive, and we compare the amount of tags in common. So, and the idea is we put them in order. In this case, now we are getting into the technical part of how we select the images that appear in the refined. So the idea is we order the images based on the number of connections they have in common with the current image, where the idea is the most tags an image of the static archive as in common with the current image, it means he is more similar, or it's more meaningful connected to that image, or they represent something similar, while the least tags in common mean they are something that maybe it's not related, or yeah, that's something that's not related. The question then was, if we just show images that have a lot of tags in common, we have the problem that maybe would become too obvious to get images from in that state. So maybe the person, when was taking an image, everything that the person would get would be what they expected, which is not really what we wanted, because if we wanted to generate a dialogue, would have to exist reflection, and in the way, a bit of surprise. So we decided to go with the idea of, okay, let's grab all the images that have connections in some sort of way to the current image. Let's order them by number of tags in common, and let's separate it into like 5 chunks, where each chunk has a different level of tags in common with the current image. So for example, if you look at the center of the screen, the ones in the bottom would have almost no connection with the current image. We select one from that row, and for example, we select one from the top row that are the ones which are most connected. And so we select five images, all with different levels of connection with the current image, with the idea of, in a way, also provoking and doing, at least, or surprising the person into having the bereaved person reflect more and create a dialogue with the past. Then we grab the current image and these and these images from the static archive, and we send them to the refined. And this is where the person will actually interact with this collection of images. So I think it's first interesting to explain what is actually refined. So refined is actually a smartwatch. We decided to go with the idea of a smartwatch because you gave us capabilities out of the box that would make sense in this piece. So the things that were most useful obviously was the fact that it's already connected to the internet, that is already enabled by default, and the fact that it has things like touch or the gyroscope and the accelerometer. In this case, the only way of interacting with the refine is through the gyroscope and accelerometer. There is no way of using the touch screen. So the idea is for you to start the interaction with the refine, the first thing you have to do is just pick it. And once you pick up the piece, it wakes up and shows you the image, the last image that you took. And then you can rotate the piece either forward or backwards. You can show the image on top to go through the images of the static archive that are related to the image that you took of the current. And yeah, that's it. I hope it was this was a physical piece, so it was a bit strange to try to explain like this. I hope it was, at least I could give an idea of how it works. If not, please do questions, and that's it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks both. For me, that was really great. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions. If you do, just feel free to unmute your mic and ask.
Yeah, I was wondering what was the most challenging part for you to embark on this project? I'm thinking ethics, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was the technical side.
Well, that's a good question. So you mentioned ethics, and actually, when embarking on this project, the first thing that we ran into as a project group I have to say it was before I joined, so I don't know all the exact conversations that they went through, but the one outcome of this project was, before all these pieces, actually sort of a roadmap or toolkit that we developed to help researchers in HCI design as well, to get more a grip on the sensitive context and how you interact with users in the sensitive context. So actually, ethics was a big challenge here, because you're dealing with a lot of raw emotions, but also if you're talking of end of life, it's also participants that might not make the end of the research. How to deal with consent, how to deal with all these sensitive data that we're collecting in these archives, for example, that was one big factor. For the technical side, I think that was, we have a lot of capable people here. So I always see them that they have one problem in the morning, but then in the afternoon they have it fixed. So probably a lot of small problems there as well. I don't know if that's correct, Luis?
Yeah, I would say that. I think the ethical part was is the most challenge, to the point where it basically created a full new branch of the research. In this case, in the enabling ongoingness project, yeah.
I think if you're interested to that, you can also, I don't know if Jay has posted the website or no. So we have our research project has a website where you can also find a link, I think, to the ethical roadmap that we have online at the moment. So that's just a toolkit that you can look through to see if that is any benefit to your own research as well. So it's really designed to go through with your team and to have these conversations and sort of document how you think about ethics and how you want to approach this in your project, as sort of an addition and preparation for ethic proposals as well. But more, yeah, to keep it an ongoing conversation throughout the whole research project.
Brilliant. So a question was asked by Radita, which was how many images were used, and Jane has responded that there's been 63 images in the archive. But on that topic, I have a question about, so key to this idea is taking offline media, so like images and so forth, and putting them into a digital medium. But what were the challenges with doing that? Because I have lots of photos, for example, where the image quality is not great, the color and contrast is not great. So did you have to do a lot of manual processing for them to be suitable, or what was the process?
Well, I mean,
Luis?
yeah, I mean, I'm not the best person to talk about that because I didn't see that part, but yeah, I think everything had to be scanned, I guess, all the images from the start, from because all images were physical at the start. So yeah, so that's for sure had to be a process that took long. And the idea of tagging each and every picture is for sure a process that it's not easy. And given the context, I think even more difficult, that you have to go through each picture and digitize it and tag it and repeat the process over and over, all the images. So yeah, a challenge for sure, yeah.
And I have another question, which is, this is one of the artifacts, but I'm wondering, and part of the project is to use images in other media you mentioned, so like audio perhaps, or video. So are they also in this wristwatch artifact, or are they in different devices?
Well, in this case, the Refine just works with images. That's the idea. It can also support videos, that's for sure, but the idea for now is the Refine only uses images. If we go to the other prototypes that we developed, yes, then we start to enter into that part. Yes, we had aims to explore more things other than images, and we have started doing it. But yeah, on the Refine was just the concept of images.
I think you can, if you go down 2 slides, Luis, and I can show because we have been doing developing different research artifacts for this project. Oh, they're not in your slides yet.
Yeah, they are not.
Oh, sorry. Shall I share my screen then?
Yeah, I think it would be good to talk about the other artifacts. Although it's a demo of Refine, the other ones seem also equally great.
Yeah, I'll pull up the slides, or at least the photo that we have of the. Okay. Well, sorry. Yeah, so too far. All right. So yeah, indeed what Jay said, like Refine is one of the research artifacts that we did, and next to that we have developed 4 more that have been ready or deployed or almost ready for deployment. But then the lockdown happened, so no deployment yet, unfortunately. But we've also developed one locket that's based on the similar smartwatch, but this actually also displays videos and GIFs as well. But here you can see, so that's the one in the middle, where we scanned the photos, the old photos. And actually, because it's the old photos and not digital quality, they get this nice, these qualities that you would have on analog photos, like a bit of grain or like the shine you would see on them from the light. You almost get that feeling from the locket as well, so you can see a bit on this picture. And another artifact that we did, so maybe I should explain a bit what this locket does. So this is for a 100-year-old lady who we recruited together with her son. So she always has a permanent set of 7 photos on this locket from her own past that are meaningful to her. And then her son and her relatives can send another 13 photos to it, additionally, that they collect in their everyday life or things they would like to share with her. And through that, she can sort of go through this photo locket. So it's, I think, as you can see it, like it's the size of almost a regular photo locket. And she can go through these photos in her own time, in her own home. And it might provoke a sense of dialogue even while they're alive, or even create sort of a curated set of photos by sending and sharing these photos. And then we have created another lockout, which has a slightly different concept. So this is for a bit younger participant, but she lost her twin brother some years back. And we made a lockout for her that is around the special dates of people that she lost. So she lost, besides her twin brother, she lost also other relatives and friends. And she commemorates them on special dates. So now we have this lockout that always has a permanent collection of photos that are meaningful to her. But then once a special date comes closer or happens on that day, you get a new set of photos that is linked to the person that that special date is for. And through that, it sort of fits in her rituals, but gives her a new way of expressing this and always carrying it with her. And then the artifact you see on the right here, which is Trails. And this specifically focuses on audio and stories. So here we work with a participant whose grandparents had both been diagnosed with dementia. And she visited them over the period of a year and collected all these stories from their lives in their hometown and also the objects in their house. And then we link those stories to meaningful locations in the hometown of her grandparents. So when she took this little, how do you call it? Like, she took Trails, this artifact, with her on that walk. When she would pass one of these locations, she would hear a set of three or four stories or audio fragments that were meaningful for that location or that time of year, for example. So an example was that her grandfather would do a lot of bird watching in a local nature reserve there. But now they don't really go out that much anymore, that far, because they're just not as mobile anymore. But when she took this with her, she would hear the sounds of birds, and then her mother telling her about her grandfather pointing out the names of birds, for example. So you get this sense of presence in the places that are really familiar for you. And you might also learn something new about those places that you didn't know. So those are like different prototypes that deal with different types of media and also different contexts. So I hope that gives a bit more insight.
Yeah, no, it does. It really does. Thank you. I think Adriana had a question. Or should I? Well, she asked, where are the images stored? And I kind of have a similar question. Like, where are the video or audio stored? And is it encrypted? Because it seems to be personal data. So could you talk about that process? Yeah,
in this case, yeah. I mean, all the logic that we have right now, it's within the university in a way. Yeah, not in a way, it is. So all the server side, everything is running locally, and it's created because that's an important part of the process, is to ensure that this was not someplace stored that could be like suffer some sort of attack or in this case, in terms of privacy of like bigger companies. So the idea was to keep it within a place that we would have control, but not control in the way that it's not someone that we don't know that has access to it. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And then Adriana has asked another question, if there's any student projects tied into this overarching Ongoingness project. And actually, it might be useful if you could tell us a bit more about any other artifacts you plan to create in the future too. Those 2 questions.
Yeah, I don't think at the moment there are any student projects involved in this, but I'm not sure if there's any plans for that in the future. I think maybe Carl or Jane, if they're here, can give a better explanation around that. I don't know if they're up for that. Otherwise, I'll maybe.
So I was just trying to find buttons so I could unmute there. Yeah, sorry. So the question was, are there any student projects tied with this? So not currently. I mean, I think what we have got is, Luis and Linnea said at the start, you know, we've the beginning of the project, we sort of forked off and we had this really interesting exploration around the sort of ethical roadmap, and that's sort of taken us in a sort of pivot in a new direction. It's one area that's sort of moving forward that we might want to expand on separate from the Ongoingness project. But actually, I think one of the things that's really nice, and hopefully it shows in the pieces actually, is that the reason we're able to get these sort of really nicely well-formed artifacts that sort of blend that, clear attention to detail in terms of the eye of the design, but also thinking of the sort of considered interactions and the technology itself is on point, is that we're quite a small team and we work very, very closely together. So, each one of these pieces is the result actually of sort of tireless collaboration and work between everyone, I think, in the team itself. So it's not just a case that this is sort of handed over and done, but actually we work very, very close and in a very sort of, I guess it's quite a personal way as well, particularly for the refine piece, with that one being so close to home as well. So yeah, we haven't got student projects at the moment, but maybe this is an area of something that we could expand in the future. So in particular, one of the things that's been quite exciting about this is we've been able to build this sort of infrastructure in the background so that we can start to explore new ideas around the Ongoingness space. So the sort of technology infrastructure that's been put in place by Luis and Jamie Mahoney as well from Northumbria University, that graph database, that infrastructure is quite flexible. So we've got the opportunity actually to sort of embed that and use that in different modalities. And then with that, we have a new member who's joined the team just in the last couple of months, Josh, who's responsible there for the trails piece and the wood that you see. And we're quite excited actually. He said some really nice ideas about different sort of tangible artifacts as well that we might be able to embody and embed this graph database and this type of logic in as well. So hopefully we'll start to see a sort of new range of devices and artifacts in a similar sort of spirit here as well.
So I have another question to, I guess, anyone on the team. So the middle artifact intrigues me the most because I could imagine using it or buying it and giving it to my grandmother, for example, and setting it up. So I'm wondering if there's any ideas for that to be possible in the future. So for example, by open source and all the associated software, but also maybe some like guides or processes for building this thing, or even just buying it, for example.
Yeah, I think at the moment we have speculated about it because you're not the first one to ask that question. I think at the moment the smartwatches that we use are not in production anymore. So before we would do any of that, that would need some technical redesigning of the piece. So I don't think it's in the near future at least. But it might be something worth exploring once we've deployed these as well, because we don't have any. Well, one is with a participant now, but it's not functioning optimally. So that needs a reboot, but we can't visit her at the moment. So that's a bit of a delay there. But yeah, so I see Carl turning on his camera. Maybe you can jump in.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to add to that, one of the big challenges that we've been coming up against this type of work is that the pieces themselves, we've been working with the participants to actually design them. So you can't see it necessarily in the image here, but the locket on the reverse side, actually, it's been completely personalized and customized actually for the participant that we're working with. So they've been part of this design process. Equally, the sort of trails here, that's actually a map of the sort of hometown, and this is one of the hand-drawn maps that the participants been doing themselves. So these are really, really bespoke. So it's always a challenge when you're thinking then about actually how do you sort of either scale up or produce these on a different level. And I think the sort of interactions that we want people to have with these are not a sort of throwaway interaction you have with a wearable technology like a fitness tracker, but actually it's much more about the sort of, there's a sort of value to this piece. It's an artifact. It's something that actually hopefully will become an heirloom in that family. That the intention here is not to be a sort of throwaway digital thing, but instead the fact that this is the sort of, I guess, the sort of center of this sort of really meaningful relationship between you and your loved ones that you're either you've either lost or are losing. So I think from that point of view, it seems at the opposite end of being able to sort of just quickly produce. I mean, I think the idea of open source, yes, certainly. The danger with that then is it doesn't necessarily get it into the hands of the people that need it, and there's a sort of real technical barrier. We said already, the sort of deconstruction of these original smartwatches that are now not available, and then actually even putting those together in these sort of very the materials as well. This is sort of brass and corin is the first one. one. That requires skill to sort of turn and do that. We've got the metalwork. So I think there's a lot of challenges to this. We have looked at, there are some open source kits for doing these types of things, and maybe there might be a sort of future in this, particularly with the sort of emergent trend in terms of the sort of 3D and maker spaces. But I think that one has a lot of sort of challenges further down. And I think here we're still trying to sort of figure out, some of the other challenges around how do you sustain this type of service. I think there's a really nice question earlier about where we store the images, and actually it's brought about new challenges for us and the team, and things that came up when we talked about the ethics of this actually is that we want this system to exist beyond the life of the project. So how do we ensure that actually there's a space where the digital archives will persist beyond our 3-year project? So there's sort of bigger challenges, I guess, at play that we need to try and address and identify solutions to before something like this could necessarily exist as a sort of service or a product that would go beyond the research itself. And as I say, that's some of the stuff that we're trying to grapple with and untangle through this work as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much for that. So does anyone have any other questions? Otherwise, I think we're...
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yes, please.
Sorry, can you hear me okay? My microphone.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I really love the idea of surprise and how you achieve that through the combination of like more closely and loosely associated tags. But I was wondering how you decided to sort of do that, to include that variance, and also how is that received by the person using the device?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that's actually, I think, especially with the refund piece, Jane lived with it for 3 months. And well, to be fair, that with the tagging, we had to make a decision. And as Louise explained, like we chose to not make it a complete mirroring of the photo that was sent in, but to have a bit of variation in photos. And there was also some interesting findings that actually she experienced, that when sometimes the series of 5 photos would be a really nice narrative going from very relatable to a bit more distant to relatable again, or having that really from positive to negative sort of storyline through the photos. Though other days it would just be nice to look at those photos knowing that they in some way relate to it, but it not being completely obvious how. So you start thinking about that. But there were also moments where the mirroring was actually not desired. So for example, when you feel down and you get photos of your loved one feeling down as well, or being in a negative situation, that might not help at that point. So in that case, the mirroring was actually the opposite of what you would desire in that moment. So we're still playing around with that a bit. And there were even instances where she resubmitted one of her photos with different tags to get a different result, because the narrative that she got from her first response just was not at all what she would want at that moment. So those are actually things that we need to explore in the future as well, how we can create this when mirroring actually is maybe a thing that you want, or when you actually want the opposite, or how you can create this sort of nice curve in your experience through the photos. And then we currently base it on the semantics, so actually using the same words, but we're also exploring how we can look more in the meaning of the words, so happy being related to joy and to smiling, rather than actually only happy and happy is a link, sort of, if that makes sense. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thanks. Can I quickly follow up with, is it free tagging, or is there sort of a vocabulary built in that the user selects from?
I think at the moment it's quite free tagging. So I think you asked for the people not wearing earphones, like if it's free tagging or if there's a preset lexicon. So at the moment it's free tagging. We don't have a preset lexicon, but as Louise explained, like over time you build sort of a set of words which you can easily pick from to relate it. But we're also exploring indeed again. So I think Kyle can explain about that, the lexicon.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. So one of the things that the choices that we made at the start, going for the graph database, was exactly so that we could actually evolve the structures, so those RDFs, for how we start to relate and understand the content. And this is something that actually we've tried to engage and learn through the interactions with our participants as well. So the way that they're sort of talking and defining meaning and relationships between their content and how they describe those archives. So in particular for this refine piece, this was one where it evolved, and then what we had actually was sort of a bit of a sort of wheel that defined some of these terms that could be used, and it was just more as a way of actually creating a simple interface for adding those tags. But actually it was still open to new things being added as well. And I think, you know, anything that's going to exist in this space needs to live in that realm of sort of being open to these sort of very sort of evolving tags and descriptions. And actually some of the stuff we've been exploring now is actually trying to think, is there ways that we can sort of relate content without actually having to express meaning to it as well. So, you know, one of the things that can be quite challenging actually is, you know, putting your emotions into words and talking about those. So we've sort of been looking and experimenting with different ways. And I think actually in the latest prototype, Luis even had something where you genuinely could just say these images are connected and not necessarily define what that connection is, but it's more this idea that you could express at least those connections and build that up over time. You know, one of the things actually, in fact, there's a demo of it Thursday, sorry. So it's the work actually from Timothy Nate and Abby Roper, where they've been looking at using redacted poetry, and you know, it's quite interesting to think actually how you might be able to express your relationship actually through existing works or existing archives. You know, so using text from, you know, poetry or from books, from sort of rich media already, as a way that you try and express some of these tags or definitions for the content, because what we're looking for here is sort of slightly goes beyond the traditional context aware. Yes, we have things like location, but trying to go away from those absolutes and more into those sort of symbolic understandings and symbolic meaning in relationships between content. So I think this is a space that hopefully we'll start to provide some nice interesting ideas and possibly even answers for that through the project. But it's something actually that needs a lot more work for us to think about actually how we would sort of live with and grow these types of interfaces in the future.
If I may add something, maybe would you like to look at the literature for hypertext narrative to see if there is something there in the tagging that can help you in, you know, creating your model of how you're gonna pick these 5 pieces of 5, you know, audios or pictures or whatever, and link them in a way that makes a narrative. Just a suggestion there, not a question.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good one. Thanks.
So I actually have one question, as always, right? But it's a short one. So I see these devices primarily use kind of like one media. So the Locket has, you know, images. The third one has audio. But is there any idea to kind of like use multimedia, like different forms at the same time? So audio and video. Maybe not, you know, as you're seeing it, but maybe you see an image and then next is an audio, for example. Is that in the roadmap?
I think at the moment we don't have anything yet, but we're working on some new concepts that are a bit more provoking the imagination, I think, so to say, to see what kind of more are what more possibilities there are. So also maybe moving away a bit from literal photos with literal meaning to more creating experiences of memories, or yeah, for example, taking a walk through the forest can also be that experience, or that memory can be triggered in different ways. So it could be the sound of the leaves, but also maybe the smell of a woodland, or for example, like that. So we're trying to look into that, but that's very early on, that we're in the early stages. So I don't have any conclusive answer for that. I see Kyle jumping in again. That's a good cue with your camera turning on. So
Can't resist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing as well with this is that we're very much guided and driven by the archives of our participants. So, you know, one of the things that we probably have in abundance is things like photographs, either sort of digital or sort of physical printed photographs. One of the things that I imagine we're going to start to see more and more is we have, you know, participants who have lived more of their life in the digital realm or having access to other forms of media capture, that we might start to find that we've got other forms of media, you know. So for the trails one, for example, there was an intentional act by the participant who was working with us. She would actually capture and record some of those stories. So she was doing audio recordings, but actually we now live with and have, you know, sort of audio recordings. I know, Jay, you're keen on WhatsApp and audio WhatsApps back and forward, you know, so actually we have, you know, these sort of mixed modality archives now. So I think certainly that's something that you know, it will hopefully be something that we touch on a bit more as we start to work with other participants who have archives that sort of reflect that. Whereas, as I say, these pieces at the moment have sort of been more balanced towards actually the archives that people had, those existing archives, or the ones that they were interested in sort of preserving. So whether it was the sort of stories in the voice, or whether it was these sort of images and the way that they could sort of engage with those. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say anything's off the table, but it's more that we're just trying to sort of work with those participants to create then something that allows them to engage in this theory of continuing bonds, and how we can sort of look to and sort of work with their media as a way of embedding that into everyday life for them.
Brilliant, thank you. No, that sounds really great. Especially, I was just thinking of, you know, like things like audio, not only in terms of voice, but music. So like your mother's favorite song, that's always something that everyone relates to. So does anyone have any other questions before we wrap up? If not, I would just want to say that you can learn more on the enablingongoingness.com website. And also you can, if you Google Refind, you'll find the latest Kai paper, which outlines the design process and one participant's experience using it for a few months, the sort of challenges they find with that. So if you want to learn more, you can contact pretty much anyone on this call. And yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for presenting, Linnea and Luis. That was really, really great. And I will see you all soon. There's a few other sessions today, which you may be interested to find out more about. So please attend those also. Thank you.
Bye.
Oh yes, I stopped the recording because like everyone's leaving. Yeah, I thought that was really good. I thought, oh wait, are we still live on YouTube? Hello, YouTube.
Oh wait, I'll switch off.